Hello, Rufus King Nation. This is Anthony Lauer, art and design teacher at Rufus King High School, and you're listening to the King's Cast, a podcast introducing our listeners to the men and women working each day to teach the next generation of Rufus King generals. Today, we're talking about Rufus King High School with Athletic Director Jeremy Nichols. We will also discuss how the International Baccalaureate program aims to develop King students into balanced, principled risk-takers who strive to create a better and more peaceful world. Thanks for taking a few minutes to listen today. Good morning, Mr. Nichols. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thanks for coming in. I appreciate it when staff get the opportunity to come and highlight what we have offered here at Rufus King. And I think that you have a unique role and perspective on that with the two different hats you wear here at King. Speaking of which, Mr. Nichols is one of our individuals and societies teachers here at Rufus King, but he also is is the only athletic director running all of our sports, athletics, and extracurriculars. I think that covers it. I didn't talk about what specific classes you teach. I thought it was U.S. Gov, but I could be wrong.
I have U.S. history this year and economics.
There we go. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, let's dive right in. What was your route to becoming a teacher?
I think pretty traditional. I had some fantastic teachers and some fantastic role models growing up that had some influences on who I became. And one specifically, I thought that's the kind of person I want to be, someone who is selfless and who is always working for the betterment of the community and always helping people to see things from multiple perspectives. And I thought that's the kind of person I want to be. And so that's kind of what focused me on teaching. And then I played sports at King when I was here, and I just kind of fell into coaching when I was 19 and ended up coaching some of the summer league teams at King. And then got into more coaching, and that kind of worked really nice with teaching, working with kids, and that led me to a career in education.
Where you are today. I will put in that you are a former King graduate, so you're another one of our guests. That
and
just
I got my full IB diploma.
Even better. I was also going to ask, though, you want to name drop who your inspiration was, or no? You don't have to.
There's a bunch, and I'll leave him out because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings.
No worries, that
been
makes absolute sense. Well, excellent. How do you incorporate IB into your role or roles at Rufus King?
Yeah, I think that idea of being balanced is something that I focus a lot on, both in the classroom and as athletic director. So, in the classroom, I'm constantly working on helping kids see an alternate perspective. When we're in economics, it's, okay, how does Keynesian economics work, but how can a classical approach be right? And how do both have right answers, and how are both limited in their perspectives of the world? When we're in U.S. history, how does a conservative philosophy look at problems and look at history, and how does a more liberal philosophy look at history? How we can have multiple perspectives that can look at the same thing, have two totally different answers, but both have right answers, but both have flaws in their thinking. So I think that idea of being balanced is really important in the classroom, but I think that idea of being balanced is really important just in life, and I think that's where sports come in, is so much of the stuff that I do in history is discussions about leadership and what's the proper way to lead people, and what gets people to work together for a goal. And those are great discussions in history, but it's on the athletic field where you get to practice that. When you're on football, how do you get 11 guys to all work together? When you're on basketball, how do you get 5 girls to all coalesce as one? And so it's that balance of there's the academic side of learning things, but then there's the athletics of applying it. And I think that's what's really cool about my role is I get to see both the academic side and then the application side. And that's really what I enjoy about being here.
I think that's one of the life lessons that everybody needs, but especially parents, as I'm reminded just this morning trying to get out the door, of reminding my own children, my youngest son specifically, that we're a team. We're a team of four, right?
Yeah.
We needed to get out the door this morning. The oldest had orchestra lessons. I had this interview coming up. Please just get dressed. Let's remember that we're all trying to be on a schedule and we're all trying to make sure that everybody can enjoy. I do want to segue with that then into activities. You had mentioned athletics a couple times, but the same thing applies, and I think it's really good advice and a great way to look at how extracurriculars and athletics helped to balance out the theory. We get that application, and groups and activities get the same thing by having boards, by having members that are organizing classmates, by leading classmates in those activities as well. And I know that Rufus King has some of the most diverse activities and extracurriculars amongst most of MPS high schools.
Yeah, I think traditionally when we think of athletics, it's like, well, there's the football team or the soccer team or basketball, and those are all important and well established at King, but there's a lot of other activities, like there's a rock climbing club, or there is Latinos Unidos, or the Black Student Union, or there's cooking club, there's craft club, and the craft club.
Games Society.
Gaming
I just finished
Society,
their logo
right?
for them,
One time for a while there was the Harry Potter Club. And all these clubs, maybe they're not going out on Friday night with underneath the lights and competing, but there's something about organizing groups and developing structure and schedule and communications and ordering shirts. It sounds so simple, but hey, when you're 15 and you have to organize 20 people to put an order in for a shirt, and then work with the accountant here to set up a purchase order, to follow through and be in charge of accounting. Like, these are small things that I think as adults we take for granted, but when you're 15, 16, 17, it's working with these little responsibilities and failing in them frequently that builds
Fail
up
forward.
and as an adult failing at them frequently as well. But those little failures that come along with organizing clubs and groups that I think that allow kids to grow so much. I'm thinking, we just ran prom, and we have a prom committee, and we had a couple slip-ups and failures in communications. We had a couple slip-ups and failures of not getting orders through. One of our photo booths didn't show up last second. But it was really important for kids to see this whole process of how things function. And when they go on, maybe they'll be an event designer, and maybe that's their career path. Or maybe
start
it's
a
not.
nonprofit. They're going to move up into management. They're going to almost anything. I mean, everything you've said in the last 5 minutes, it just rings soft skills, soft skills, soft skills. All these things that we've heard as educators that students need. You've just mentioned them and how they're getting that here at Rufus King.
Yeah. And that's, I think we do a great job of offering so many opportunities to do that, whether it's sports or chess or debate or these clubs or band or orchestra. There's so many different ways here that you can get involved and practice academics outside of the classroom, and practice failing at a small scale, so when it comes time to run that big nonprofit gala or run that massive event, you've had practice at a smaller scale, so it's not overwhelming, and it's doable.
No, it's an awesome opportunity for kids. It's part of what brought me to where I am as well, just that opportunity to be part of. I was a theater kid and an art kid in high school, no surprise. And that's part of what brought me here, as well as Miss Fig, if I ever get her on the podcast, because she and I went to high school together. So you might have answered this already, because there's multiple different ways that you answered it in the last two questions. But as athletic director or as a teacher, do you have a favorite part of your job, or maybe a unit that you teach?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember one when I first got here 9 years ago, where you would teach U.S. history through facial hair, which blew my mind as a young educator.
Yeah. I've got a couple different answers. In history, I do a big unit on the Civil War and Reconstruction, and I would shave a beard into a beard style of a Civil War general, more or less just to keep kids interested, because 1860s Civil War can can get a little dry.
But the 1860s are coming back with, or not coming back now, but Downton Abbey and Bridgerton and all these other eras just outside of U.S. history.
Sure. But what I've always enjoyed in U.S. history, and I guess I shouldn't say I enjoy teaching about it, maybe not so much the content, but I've really enjoyed Reconstruction of the United States right after the Civil War, because I think it really lays a foundation for a lot of the social problems that we have today in terms of like, we've ended slavery, hooray, but there's so much more to just like saying, hey, here's freedom. There was so much embedded inequality in that, and I don't think we do a good job as a culture like exploring some of the Supreme Court cases, or how some of the amendments failed, or how some of the socioeconomic structures got put in place. And I think it's eye-opening to kids that right away in the late 1860s, 1870s, the things they're struggling with today are taking root, 150 years ago. So I do enjoy that in history. On the athletics side, I really enjoy watching a kid who's struggled finally get success. There's one young man who played on a basketball team, and we didn't have a great basketball team this year. This kid didn't go off to play to college, but he struggled anytime he was put in a pressure situation. And the second to last game of the year, he was fouled and had to hit 2 free throws to win the game, and he hit both of them. And the look on his face of finally succeeding under pressure was huge. And I have no idea what he's doing now. I know he's not playing basketball, but I think you can always point back to that time and say, I handled pressure. I was able to overcome something that was holding me back and holding me down, and I conquered it. And it just takes that one time to give kids that self-confidence. So there's a balanced answer for you, right?
No,
I love the academics, but I also love the soft athletic stuff.
I have to laugh at only myself in this regard, but I had just changed over that intro. If any of our listeners have gotten through the first 6 episodes, I don't say balanced, principled risk takers, but I thought I'd switch it up to some of the other IB learner profiles so that it doesn't sound too repetitive after 6 episodes, and I believe we're in our 7th episode now. And I'm glad that balance is really taking hold with your approach to this interview today, as well as teaching, coaching, and managing as an AD. For students and parents out there, what advice do you have for them about being successful as a student or athlete here at Rufus King?
I'll talk about the athlete side, and specifically a lot of the athletes that, I'll take it a couple different routes. Everybody should be involved in athletics or co-curriculars. That's the key to success is getting involved in something. You don't have to be great. If you're not fast, we love you on cross country. That's okay. You don't need to be a great golfer to be on the golf team. We teach most of our swimmers how to swim. And so I think one element for success is get involved and fail and have success and grow from it. I think that's important. I think there's another level of athlete that we're talking to that would say like, well, I want to play at the collegiate level, or I want to play at a professional level. And we've had a few of those come through. And I think the advice to them is, well, you can do that at King, right? Like you see Jordan Poole in the NBA playoffs lighting it up. He went to King. You've seen Lance Kendricks on the football field. He went to King. So the coaching level is skilled here so that you can play at a Division I level. We just had a kid go to Penn State for football. We're going to have another kid commit to a D1 football program in the next month. Angel Toombs is going to go walk on at the University of Wisconsin. And these are all great kids. But why they had success is because they were dedicated to their craft. They were in the weight room in the summers. They were leaders on the team. They were coachable. And so if that's something that you are looking at doing, and that's something that you want to be, it's great to want it, but it's about what you do that defines you. And so if you want to be a Division I athlete or play professionally, you can't just talk about it. You have to put forth the effort, and that means come to the weight rooms in the summer, come to the weight rooms after school, make sure your diet's right, make sure you're listening to the coaching, and the coaches have the connections with a lot of collegiate coaches, and they know what the collegiate coaches are looking at. So be coachable, be dedicated, be focused.
Excellent. With this, as we've alluded to a couple times now, you hold a unique position at King, being athletic director and teacher. You have one foot in teaching, and of course one foot in administration and organization on a grand scale. How has this duality helped you in both roles?
It helps me see kids in multiple perspectives. When I was just teaching, I only knew kids in the classroom, and I only knew them in a history or an economics classroom. And that's just one element of a kid, is that 52 minutes that we have with them. But seeing them now in the classroom and in sports, I get to see a more representative picture of who they truly are, and how some of them come out of their shell in sports, and versus how some of them aren't super confident in the classroom, or some are great in the classroom, but man, they struggle on an athletic field. And so it's interesting to kind of see this balance, this broader picture of what every student is. And that's fun. That's fun to see a wider array of all the talents that kids have at King. It's interesting. It's probably one of the joys that I have that keeps me doing both roles.
Yeah, I don't have that as much in the classroom, and you make me kind of want it more, to see other aspects. Because just as a classroom teacher, you, besides getting them as a student, you may connect with one or two kids an hour, and you might find more about them, and they'll ask more about you, and it becomes more of an eye-opening relationship where you can see them as not just the grade point average or the score they're earning on that particular assessment. But it sounds like being in both worlds, you've been able to do that on several occasions very often. And as you ended with, it helps keep you passionate for what you do, which is
you get
excellent.
A real qualitative understanding of kids instead of a data quantitative understanding of kids. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
As we wrap up, I've started the tradition of asking for a closing thought, quote, or book recommendation for anyone out there. Do you have any of those?
I'll give you a couple, because I got a bunch. Closing quote: the teacher's job isn't to tell you what to think; it's to tell you what to think about. And that's directly taken from the guy that got me into teaching. It's a great quote. Teacher's job isn't to tell you what to think, but to tell you what to think about. Books, I'll give you two. I'll give you an academic book. There's a great anything by Robert Caro, specifically Master of the Senate, which talks about Lyndon Johnson and how he ran the Senate in the 1950s. Has a lot to do with civil rights bills and things like that. It's absolutely fantastic. It's like 900 pages, but it flies through. It's so well written. But a sports book for athletics, The Sports Gene, is really good. Talks about whether great athletes are born or whether they can be made, and kind of the debate that goes on there. Sports Gene, that's another solid one. So there's a quote in two books.
Thank you for adding to our listeners' repertoire of things to do, especially for the summer. Although this episode won't come out until August, as I think that'll be the next docket open, so August 15th. But thank you again, Jeremy. I appreciate it. It was an awesome conversation, timely, and very informative.
Thanks, man. Glad to be here.
Wonderful. Have a good day.
Yep.
Hello, Rufus King Nation builders. I wanted to thank you for taking the time today to listen to our 7th King's Cast podcast, introducing our community to the staff working daily in the halls of Rufus King High School to support our student generals. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation about what it means to be a student athlete at Rufus King with Jeremy Nichols, proud alumni and current athletic director. I hope today's conversation has helped shed a light on the many extracurriculars Rufus King High School has to offer, as well as our continued commitment to educating our students. That said, please join us again next month as we sit down with another Rufus King staff member to discuss how they bring the International Baccalaureate to life in their classrooms.